Welcome to the Optimum Human podcast, the show that interviews the world's top experts in fitness, nutrition, mindset, and beyond. Let's get into the show.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Optimum Human podcast. My name is Brian McKay and he's Claude Petrulis.
Hi.
And today we've got an amazing guest, Jamie Lee. Jamie, how are you this morning?
I'm fantastic. How are you guys doing?
I'm doing quite well. Brian?
I'm doing awesome myself. So let's go ahead and jump right on in. So Jamie, what is it that you do?
I am a shaman, and that encompasses a whole bunch of things that I do. It's more like, what don't I do?
Fair enough. Would you like to elaborate on that real quick?
Yeah, it's, yesterday I was looking through one of my teachers, his website, and there was something that he said that I really enjoyed, where he has this about me section, and he's pretty much like, screw you, I'm not giving you any information about me. And I actually really appreciated that, because when you work in the shamanic world, I do something different with everybody. So I have a lot of tools in my toolbox. I'm a body worker. I do Ayurvedic medicine. I'm into Chinese medicine. I'm an aromatherapist. I do clairvoyant work. I do energy work. But there's no way I can ever tell a client when they come to me, like, what do you do? I'm like, I don't know. What do you need me to do? Because it is so different with every single person. I mean, some person I'm just going to sit there and be like, okay, well, we need to adjust your food and you need to add burpees to your workout. And somebody else, we're going to do some deep, like existential work and redo stories from their childhood or past life. So it's a very broad spectrum, what I do, which makes my job very interesting for me, because it's like, it's not a 9 to 5. It's not sitting at a desk and doing the same thing every day. It's every single human being that I come in contact with gives me something different, and I give them something different.
Awesome. So when somebody does come to you, how do you kind of explain that, or just the way you did for us?
Yeah, I used to try to explain it, and it didn't work out very well. So now when somebody comes to me and they want to know what I do, I ask them, well, what are you in need of right now? What's going on in your life? So I'm starting to move from a explanation place to a, why don't we sit down and talk for 10 or 15 minutes? Call me, we'll do essentially like a little mini consultation. And then I can tell you, based upon what your energy field is telling me, what your story is telling me, what I can do for you.
Okay. Very cool.
So it seems like, just like for me in the training world, and I'm sure Brian's seen it also, if one person comes in, doesn't mean the next person's going to have the same, shoulder injury or back injury. So same people won't have, the same emotional problems or, pent up feelings, so it's amazing that you have such a variety of tools to help people with. It's really,
yeah,
really cool.
It's fun. I started off in the training world years ago, like, God, we're looking at 12, 13 years ago, maybe.
Oh my God.
I was a personal trainer. And that's one thing that always had frustrated me, because I would get different clients, and you're trained to, assess different, injuries and different, patterns in people's bodies. But none of as far as the diet stuff, like, in Ayurveda, we're looking at 5 elements, and everybody's made up of a different equation of 5 elements. So, my one client is not going to lose weight the same way the other client is. And that always frustrated me, that it wasn't addressed. And then I got into Ayurveda, and I was like, oh, I can mix this together. And now it's just a big melting pot of a ton of stuff.
And is Ayurveda where you originally started branching off from training, or did you find someone that was doing something differently? Like, how did you stop being just a trainer and start, helping people holistically?
Yeah, I was actually going to ask, sorry to jump in, but, can you kind of take us through your journey of how you got from a little girl to where you are now?
Yeah.
In 5 words or less.
This is where I talk about the spaceship, right? No, I was a dancer and an athlete, and I was constantly injured, and Western medicine let me down. I was 15 years old, needing to take, like 3 ibuprofen every 5 hours just to get through math class. Mm. So they're piling drugs into me, and I'm 15, and I'm sitting there going, this doesn't seem right. And then I graduated high school. I went on tour as a dancer, and just was in massive amounts of pain. Came home, speaking of insurance in America, and it was just before my 19th birthday, which is when I would have lost my insurance. So the doctor, I went in and he was just like, oh, well, let's do an MRI. This has been bothering you since you were 12. It's 7 years later. Maybe we should actually do something about this, aside from medicate you.
Imagine that, trying to investigate.
I know. And he came back and was like, oh, you have a torn meniscus. And you've been running and swimming and dancing on this for 7 years. No wonder you're in a lot of pain and constantly in the office. So we did a super quick surgery to get me in before my insurance ran out. And then it was like a catch and release program. Like they just let me go. I moved down to New York City and started working as a dancer and was in rehearsal like not even a year later and blew out my knee again. Ugh. And had another surgery out of pocket.
And that's in the States, I hear that's terrible. That's like tens of thousands of dollars sometimes.
Yeah. I've managed to be lucky every time and somehow have someone take pity on me, and it's a lot of paperwork and stuff like that, but not been nailed with like a $50,000 bill. So 6 months after that last surgery, I'd done PT and everything at that point, and I was feeling real good, and I got hit by a car. Oh. And it was one of those moments, I think that was the beginning of my spiritual awakening, because as a young child, I'd always worked with spirits, and I was like a little kid out in the forest making potions, and I was a little witch growing up. And then I kind of had a lot of fear around that. When you're constantly having spirits talking to you, people think you're weird, and then you start to think you're weird. So I kind of turned it off. And there was a voice in my head when I was riding my bike that day that screamed, this woman doesn't see you. And I just ignored it, as I'd been ignoring it for years, and I got hit. And I think that kind of woke me up to a lot of different things, how badly Western medicine had kind of let me down. I was getting turned away by doctors, and I said, screw it. I up and moved to San Francisco, and that's kind of where I started to find alternative medicine. And I had already started in New York. Like I was working at this little cafe, and, a bunch of little like artists and musicians and witches there, and, got into herbs and making my own like soap and stuff like that. But it didn't really start till I got to California and ran out of options in the Western medicine world. And then it was like, all right, I don't have another choice. Got into acupuncture, I'd never had a massage. I was like 20 at that point, 21, and I'd never had a massage as a dancer my whole life.
It must have been quite the experience.
Yeah, it was wild. So, and I kept having these really weird, I guess you could call them like health crisis. I was getting this where, it was almost like panic attacks, and, just really divinely guided. to, like telling a massage therapist about this. And then she says, well, look into breath work. And then breath work led me to Chinese medicine. So just really, really divinely supported along my way, that every time I was starting to ignore things, the universe would smack me and send me in another direction to stay on my path. And that's kind of gotten me to where I am today, just slowly but surely falling down, face planting, and having some angel lift me up and go, okay, girl, you need to get it together and keep going in this more holistic direction.
Those are exactly the words I tell Brian almost weekly.
You're
okay,
his
girl,
little angel.
you need to get it together.
It's true. When you were telling at least the first half of your story, God, all I could think of was, quite the Shakespearean tragedy.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, any time that we're ignoring that shit, it's going to come forward for us.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you either choose to keep on that same story of like, woe is me, I'm a victim. There's a million reasons why I can't do this. Mm-hmm. Or you suck it up and you say, all right, well, the common denominator in this whole equation is me. So what am I doing or what am I not doing?
That's completely right. And once people start taking responsibility and they start shaping their own destinies, they feel completely different and they transform, I think, similarly to what you did.
Yeah.
Which is awesome.
I had a personal training client that for years, this guy, I couldn't even get rid of him. When I started teaching yoga, I left the gym and I was like, I'm going out, I'm going to do personal training, but it's going to be on the side. And I was like, I can set you up with another trainer. And he was like, absolutely not. I'm going with you. I was like, okay. I worked with him for years and he wore the same outfit every single day to train in. And one day I walked in and he was wearing something different. And I was like, hey, what's going on today? And he looked at me and he was like, this yoga thing, this is like thousands of years old. There's got to be something to it. So I don't want to do personal training with you anymore. I want to do private yoga. I was like, all right, cool. And he goes, but if you tell anybody, I'll kill you. So it's like just watching him make that shift. I never talked about yoga with him. He knew I did it. He knew I was in Ayurveda school, but it wasn't something we talked about. But he just one day it was like, this, what I've been doing is not working. I want to do something else. All right, boo, let's do it.
It's amazing when somebody does that on their own volition. I'm pretty happy when somebody comes up to me and asks me about something else I do rather than just, it shows growth within them, and I love it. That's why I do this job.
Yeah, light bulb moment.
So, go ahead, Claude.
No, please, Brian. Age before beauty.
Ladies first.
I'll let you go first, Brian. I got derailed. It's okay. My flow. I gotta get my flow back together.
Fair enough. So, yeah. Wow.
Get it together, girl.
What a train practice is. Wow, I'm getting it from both of you.
Wow. Use your words, Brian. You can do it. I believe in you. No pressure.
Yeah. So anyway, Jamie, I heard a nasty, well, maybe not nasty rumor that some people have referred to you as an alcoholic. I was kind of wondering the background of that.
Well, I'm historically Irish in my descent, so we have this ability to drink more. But
not always a good ability. Not every superpower is a good one.
I know, right? But through the work that I've been doing, I work with a lot of people that have habits. I have a couple nasty habits. And I've just been watching why people do the things I do, why people drink, why people sit on Facebook all day, why people, do yoga as an addiction. And I started to really think about that, and Ayurvedically who does what based upon what their element is. And it was at a Vipassana meditation a few years ago, and met a girl and was talking to her about this. And she works in the liquor industry.
I didn't think I was allowed talking of Vipassana.
Well, it was like the 10 minutes before.
Fair enough.
And she was my roommate. It was kind of crazy. We started chatting just beforehand, and then they make you shut up for 10 days. And she is like sleeping 3 feet from me and just stewing for 10 days about all the things that she wants to talk to me about. And she just kind of verbal diarrheaed on me the moment we could talk. And she works in the liquor industry, and we started chatting about Ayurveda and alcohol. And I was like, no, I absolutely studied alcohol when I was in school. And, you know, the school I came from, we have like a very small amount of things that you know to avoid. And then we've got a huge amount of things to help balance you. So my saying is always the worst thing you can put in your body is guilt. Mm-hmm. So if you're going to do these things, here's a million things to help balance out. Don't do it every day, but you know, when you do, I'm giving you tools. And she was like, you know, you should write a book about this. I thought, okay. So she was going to take care of the alcohol portion, and I was going to do the Ayurveda portion. And then over time, it just kind of rolled into me doing it all. So just about a month or so ago, I think, my book was released, and it's called The Conscious Alcoholic. And it's a holistic approach to drinking, because some people can drink some things and not other things, and it's not the luck of the Irish. Maybe it is a little bit, but it is what your elemental makeup is. And if you are a bunch of air and ether, so you're very floaty, so you're kind of a space cadet, and you're drinking a lot of champagne, which has a lot of bubbles, it has more air. So you're air, you're adding air to it, you're just going to be a bigger airhead. So it's going to take you further out of your body faster and dry you out. So it's like, well, why not look at different spices that you could add into your drinks and different alcohol that's going to be more grounding? Because if we're going to take poison, we might as well take the highest quality poison possible.
I've always said that.
You know? Because people are going to drink. People are going to do things that maybe are not best for them. But if they can do it in a more conscious manner, isn't that a step in the right direction?
Absolutely.
If we took all of the Ayurvedic sutras totally verbatim, it would be a ridiculous life. That stuff was written 5,000 years ago. It's just not relevant anymore. So if we can take the framework of it, the biggest, most important lesson of it, and apply it to life now, you know, are we going to have a better life now?
You know, I think frameworks, that's a really good word, because that, to me, envelops everything. That envelops people's thoughts, that envelops people's actions, and it's the reason behind why people do a lot of things. So not only looking behind a system's frameworks like Ayurveda, but also digging into people's frameworks, which sounds like what you're doing. So you're working a lot with frameworks, Jamie. You're almost like a construction worker.
Oh, yeah.
I like it.
I catcall.
Me too.
Hey, girl.
But only when I look at myself in the mirror.
This has definitely been an interesting podcast. So
Brian's like, all right, we're shutting it down here.
We're going to cut it off right
Pack
here.
it up.
But in all seriousness, I'm vaguely familiar with Ayurveda, and I guess I wasn't technically aware of the fifth. I was aware of the four elements, but I wasn't aware of the fifth. Could you kind of speak on that for a moment and let our listeners have a better understanding for those that don't know?
Yeah, absolutely. So the five elements are air, ether, fire, water, and earth. I'm sure most people are familiar with at least fire, water, and earth. People get confused with the air and ether. So ether is more of a container. It's a space. It holds things. air would be more like wind. It's that movement within that space. So those would be the additional ones that are kind of hard for people to understand. And when we break it, so we have the 5 elements, but we have the 3 doshas. So when you break down air and ether, that makes up the vata dosha. And then fire and water make up the pitta dosha. And then kapha shares water with pitta. So kapha is water and earth.
Okay.
So if you're looking at kapha, you got the 2 elements, water and earth. You can have so much water that you flood your earth, or too much earth so that you dam up your water. So even within each dosha, there has to be a balance. So you move over to pitta and you've got fire and water. So fire can dry up your water and water can put out your fire. But then you move over to vata and you've got air and ether, which is a whole lot of movement, and it's not sharing any elements with the other 2. So vata is one of our most strong doshas, and air and ether are, I think, 2 of the stronger elements, just because ether is a container. So everything is contained within something. So ether is involved in all 4 of the other elements. And then you've got air, which is wind, it can dry things out, it can move things, it can change form. So it changes the form of water. It can make it boil and turn it into a gas. It can freeze it and make it a solid. As far as earth, it can move earth, it can freeze earth, it can bake earth. So there's so many things that the air does. So vata really affects everything else, and we live in a very vata society right now, where everything is constantly moving, it's constantly changing. So we are taking the strongest 2 elements and augmenting them in our life, and then wondering why we've got so many autoimmune disorders, so many disorders in the brain and the nervous system, why our kids have ADD. And it's like, well, look at our lifestyle.
It's kind of messed up.
So, yeah, Vata's a little bit of an issue right now. So that's kind of why I started off with alcohol, but there's going to be more to this series of books, and teaching people how to kind of ease up on the Vata a little bit. And that's what I do in my one-on-ones with people. A lot of times it's like, because of a huge state of Vata, like an elevated state of Vata, also means an elevated state of unconsciousness. You're unaware. I mean, when you think of an airhead, somebody that's just walking around clueless, they're not in their body. They're running into things, they're running over people, they're talking over you. They're not aware. So if we could bring people's consciousness back a little bit, get them reconnected to the earth element, to the earth within themselves, we might be a little more balanced and not have to run away to Canada when Trump gets elected.
Well, to speak on the, oh man, we've had some Trump talk before on this podcast, and it's always positive things. People are always so respectful of him. No, I'm joking, but to speak on your kind of your approach on being mindful and using a mindset. Now, would you say the current mindfulness movement and like yoga and everything is helping with things, or would you say there's a lot more work to be done? Like, because I myself have noticed a shift in the last 5 years where more people are walking around kind of thinking about what we're eating, what we're inhaling, like what we're thinking. Like, what are your like next steps and next thoughts on how to further help humanity?
Well, I think it's a bit of a double-edged sword, because we've really westernized the idea of health, wellness, yoga, meditation, consciousness. I will say that a huge a huge amount of the, shall we call it, new age holistic yogic population is full of shit.
No.
Yes. And it's just, taking one way of being and using a label, a more positive label, to be the exact same way.
Sorry, Jamie. So what you're trying to say, if I've got this right, is me doing yoga on my $150 yoga mat in an air-conditioned studio is not going to get me closer to full consciousness?
It's not going to get you closer to God, boo.
God damn it. Ah.
Sorry. No, that's the thing. It's like, so I lived in Bali for a while, and I lived in Ubud. And the thing about Ubud is it's full of a conscious community. And granted, some of those people there are really beautiful, conscious beings, but some of them are complete assholes. And they let themselves be that way because, well, I'm so spiritual and, I go to ecstatic dance 7 times a day. And it's like, no, but you're just bullshitting yourself. Like, you're not actually doing the work. You're talking about doing the work, but you're not doing the work. The work does not look like standing around in $100 bikini covered in glitter and fairy wings. Like, I'm sorry, the work looks like sitting down on that meditation pillow every single day and getting real with yourself and finding those ugly places within yourself and learning to love them. There's no glitter involved.
So Instagram is
for me,
not the path.
Instagram is not the path. It's an internal journey. And it's not pretty and it's not cute and it doesn't come in $100 pair of Lululemon yoga pants. Like, it just doesn't.
You're ruining my life, Jamie.
I'm so sorry.
Everything I've known is breaking apart.
Gotta love cognitive dissonance.
So when you see those people, can they even be helped at that point, or do they need to hit some sort of rock bottom?
Well, nobody can help anybody that doesn't want to be. And, going to yoga every day and, that's great as long as you see it for what it is, which is a moving meditation, an opportunity to break through blocks. But a lot of people are using it like someone else might use cocaine or Facebook. It's an addiction.
Or
I have to go to yoga. Yeah. And I have one of my cranial sacro teacher, he said something that was beautiful. He was like, if you have to do it every day to get through your day to make yourself feel good and right, it's not helping you. It's hurting you. Mm. So if you can't skip a day of yoga and feel okay about that, it's not helping you. Mm. You've now just created an addiction. You're just filling a hole within yourself with something external instead of going in and finding that hole and filling it with self-love.
That's a great point. And escapism is rampant. It's so crazy. And I feel like I need to read your book now. Brian and I want some signed copies, that's for sure.
Yes. We'll talk after the podcast about setting that up. But anyways, yeah, anytime you can be more conscious, that's where the step is. People want to, and I don't have anything against like AA or any of those programs. I think that they're brilliant. I think that they help people get closer to source, to God, to themselves, whatever you want to call it. Mm. But at the end of the day, if you don't dig beneath and find out why you are doing whatever it is you're doing, nothing's going to change. So you're essentially pulling that like monster out from under the bed, and putting him up in the corner of the room and then letting him run your life from the corner of the room. And I always say when I'm working with someone, let's make that monster our friend. Let's understand him. Let's chat with him, get his life story. You got to figure out why you're doing whatever it is that you're doing so that you can, like, that empowers you.
Oh, hell yeah.
I can still do whatever I'm doing. Like I can still be addicted to Facebook. But if I know why I'm doing that, and every single time I get onto Facebook, I sit there and go, I'm doing this because when I was 15, my dad told me I was no good or whatever. If I'm recognizing that wound every time I do whatever it is I'm doing to avoid it, that's better than never finding out why you're doing something. You're healing actually in that point, bit by bit.
Yeah, it's going from unconscious to conscious, which is a very important process. Now, Brian, did you have any questions? I was going to bombard Jamie with another one or two.
Have at it, man.
All right. So, Jamie, you've done a lot of training from the looks of it. What would you say, has helped you mature into the person and the practitioner you are now the most? Like, what was that one step you took that you just like, oh man, this changes everything?
Observing.
Could you get a little deeper into that?
Yeah. I don't care how many trainings I've done, how many courses. It's the observation that has given me the most information about myself, but also about my students, my clients. When I did a yoga training, my first big yoga training, part of that was we had to go and observe classes. And I learned so much doing that, more than I learned in the training itself, because I got to sit back and watch an hour and a half of somebody doing their practice. And why are they doing their practice? And you can see if they're coming from ego. You can see if they're sad. You can see if they're happy. But you also get to watch their body and notice, wow, 90% of the room when they're in a warrior two, their pelvis is tipped. So that became something that when I would go in to teach class, I already could see before I even had to look at my students. But then when I do go into class, I mean, because I came from such an observational standpoint, my teaching was all audio. Like I never demonstrated anything. All of my adjustments were in audio. It was just, you need to take your right sitting bone and you need to slide it 3 inches towards your right knee. And I want you to take your left sitting bone and tuck it in under you and move it more into the midline, in line with your belly button.
Is it weird
and
that
then
I just
that
did
worked.
that while standing?
Yeah, I did too.
That was powerful.
Because I'm doing my Warrior 2 right now.
You do all podcasts in Warrior 2.
Absolutely.
Eye of the Tiger.
Oh man.
But then some people really get that, and then somebody else say that to them and they don't get it. Because we all learn differently, we all hear things differently. So then I have to learn a bunch of different ways to say that for people to get it. You guys still there?
Yep.
I just heard a cut in the audio.
Yep, we're good.
Okay.
So what it sounds like, and I'm just interpreting this in my own way, is that your observation is helping you speak to people it's helping you say the same thing in different ways to get through to everyone, or mostly everyone.
And I don't know if you've ever been into a fitness class or in a yoga class where it's clear that teacher is just talking verbatim of what they learned. Like I've been adjusted by teachers and I'm like, you don't know your ass from your elbow. Like, because they've been taught that they need to adjust in this way, but they're not looking at me as an individual. And I think that's like what observation has taught me, that we are all individuals. And I can't adjust you the way I would adjust you. I have to separate each person and really look at their body. And then I have to separate each person and look at their energy field and how do they learn and how do they listen. Because I can't do even a clairvoyant session with somebody. Everybody can't have it the same way. It has to be different. And I have to be conscious and aware and observing that person in order to do my job.
makes total sense.
Yeah, absolutely. What's coming up for me is a particular client that I work with whose pelvis is just naturally more narrow, and so you can't treat someone with big hips the same as you would someone with a particularly narrow pelvis. It has to be completely individualized.
Yeah. I was in a workshop. I studied yin yoga, and one of the teachers is Paul Grilly, and I was in a workshop with him, and he'd have us come into a pose, and he'd walk around the room and tap us, winner, loser. And then he'd have all the winners and losers come up to the front of the room, all come into the pose, and he'd line everybody up from the biggest loser to the biggest winner. And he would say, you're all yoga teachers in here, and look at the difference in range of motion in this pose. You're going to tell me that the biggest loser is the worst one in here at yoga? That's bullshit. No. We're all built differently. And sometimes you cannot do a yoga pose. You just can't. Like, you got to get over it. Move on with your life. Pick a different one.
It's a good perspective to have, for sure. I mean,
about everything in life, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But generally, powerlifters aren't going to be good marathon runners.
Nope.
And vice versa.
Yeah, and a lot of people take that kind of to heart, kind of like as an insult. But you essentially are what you train, both mentally and physically. So, and there's some things you just cannot train, like narrow pelvises, right? So it's just, everybody's different, and I feel the more people accept that everyone's different, the more people will accept themselves, if that makes sense. Right.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, Jamie, I've got a question. Now, I usually ask people, what's their favorite books, what are the favorite courses they took. So what's been helpful for you as a professional, as a human? I mean, it could be fiction. It could be, The Martian for all I know. But like, what's your favorite book per se?
I'm a huge fan of The Neverending Story.
Oh, okay.
So I didn't know that it was a book originally. I just grew up watching the movie.
Mm-hmm.
But the book is brilliant.
It's got some deep meaning?
It's got some really deep meaning about just keeping your creative energy alive and keeping your dreams alive, because that's what's feeding reality. That's what's feeding, it's essentially saying like that's what's feeding our story, and our story's gonna end. When we stop dreaming and we stop living, the story is gonna end. And it talks a lot about the light and the dark and how they work together. And it's just a really beautiful book. Great metaphor for life.
Yeah. I like books like that make you think, that really put things in a certain perspective, especially if you're open to it, because you can read a book, a year apart and get something completely different from it. Now, I love books like that kind of really make you delve into yourself and be like, holy crap, is this happening to me? And like, am I giving up? Like if I brought up The Martian because that book, first off, it's like popular, it popped into my head, but second off, he goes through tremendous adversity, and the reason, things end up the way they do is because he never gives up, which I think is an awesome lesson for life.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, Brian, I've been hijacking the podcast. I want to defer to you for a little bit here.
Oh, sorry, I was sleeping.
Oh, I see how it is.
No, I wanted to kind of back up more to your book. I wanted to talk about some of the different alcohols and the different signs and how to combine them. Maybe, let's say, somebody who is particularly fiery, how to maybe cool someone down with a drink.
Well, anybody who's got a lot of fire shouldn't be drinking their alcohol straight. So shots are not your friend. You want something on the rocks with the water with a mixer. Alcohol by nature, it's a distillation process it's a hot and dry process. It takes, liquid, ferments it, which is fire, heats it, turns it into gas, which is now a vata place. It's an air ether place, and then brings it back down into a liquid. So it is a very hot, dry process. So if you are already hot and dry, you definitely always want to be adding water and ice to your drinks. Looking at different spices, what's cooling. There's a reason that, drinks with lime and mint are really popular in hot countries. Well, lime and mint are both cooling. Mm. So just looking at different herbs that you can add in, people never really think about infusing their own alcohol. My dad is a huge citron drinker. He likes his lemon flavored vodka, and I started infusing it for him. Okay. So I zest all the lemons and, put it in a vodka, leave it for a week and strain it out. And then he's got the medicinal properties of lemon
rather than just
built in. Yeah, because you never know. Like, this was something I always was pretty aware of, but didn't have the depth of knowledge until I wrote the book. What natural flavors means. I always was like, well, it's just it has to be a flavor of something that occurs naturally in nature. But what it is so they can go out into a field and get what they call like a profile. So they will actually take a sample of that fruit. So they take the vapor of it, and then they go back into the lab and they recreate it out of whatever they recreated out of, chemicals. Mm. That's considered a natural flavor.
Well, nowadays
another thing that's a natural flavor is beaver secretions. This is a running joke in my family right now. Everything's beaver secretion. Beaver secretions. Okay. Yeah. You heard me right.
Yep. It's one of the most popular ones too. It's crazy.
It's in a lot of candies, desserts, and it's considered a natural flavoring because when you're reading ingredients and you see beaver secretions, that's not necessarily something you think of as tasty. So if they can manipulate you by saying it's a natural flavor, it just has to be something that occurred at one point in nature, or that they've taken from an animal, or like ground up bugs are used for coloring. They don't put that in there as ground up bugs used for coloring. It says natural flavor.
Oh. Yeah. I had some understanding of that, but definitely not that level of depth.
Yeah. Beaver secretions, boo.
Yeah, knowledge is a scary thing, guys.
It can. Yes. Just becoming aware.
Yeah. I've told that to so many people, and they're like, you just ruined everything for me.
Right.
You're welcome.
No more Halloween.
No. Oh. I see the candy corn in the store, and candy corn was like my jam growing up. I loved that stuff. I see it now, and I'm just like, ooh, I just feel nauseous.
Mm-hmm. That's the way I've always felt about it, but anyway.
Brian's got good instincts.
Yeah.
Well, for some things. Yeah, that's like me with bread now. I'm like, no. And that's a whole other discussion. But I love tequila. I'm a big Patron drinker. If I'm very yang, you're saying I should like make a margarita rather than just drink it straight?
Not necessarily, because it depends on what you're putting in your margarita. I mean, if you are making, and there's a margarita recipe in the book. So I make it with tequila. I infuse maple syrup with orange zest, fresh squeezed lime juice, apple cider vinegar, and soda water. You could throw some Himalayan salt in there as well, and it would be delightful. That's a pretty supportive drink, and it's at the same time cooling because you've got the citrus in there, the sweetener being maple syrup, doesn't spike the fire in the body as much. The apple cider vinegar is promoting your digestion. It's a prebiotic. Tequila is actually water in elements. So I broke down each spirit, 5 spirits, 5 elements.
Ah.
And tequila is water. It comes from a succulent.
So this is good information for me. Oh.
Yeah.
Now I'm craving a margarita at 11 in the morning.
5 o'clock,
No.
Claude. Just as long as you're conscious of it.
No, it's about intention. You pray into your margarita and then you knock it back at 11 in the morning.
See, normally I pray after the margarita toilet.
I can see that too.
Yeah.
And the more aged your tequila,
Mm-hmm.
the better off it's going to be for you because the more time it's spent in wood, which is earth, so the more grounding it is.
Wow.
So you're going to be better off with an aged golden tequila than you are with like a silver.
That's beautiful because I have a bottle of Patron Gold here, and it's
I just heard bottle of
it smells so good. Oh, but anyway, back on track. I don't know where we are. I think I started drinking a little while ago, but.
Anyways, let's go ahead and jump into our wrap-up questions. So, actually forgot to prep you for this question. Who or what would your definition be is the optimum human?
Or of the optimum human.
Yeah.
Grand.
what would my definition be of an optimum human?
It can be a person. It can be Brian. It can be me. I don't reject either one of those answers. I prefer me, though.
Possibly the antithesis.
Possibly, actually. I just opened the bottle at 11, but anyway.
Hey man, no judgment. Guilt is the worst thing you can put in your body.
I even wrote that down, so I'm okay with myself.
I think, so in my, the dedication to my book, I dedicated it to my grandmother, but then I also said, and to everyone who seeks the truth and finds this prayer that is life. And I think that's the optimal human. Anybody who is seeking truth and is finding the prayer in their life.
Now, when you say finding the prayer, can you just elaborate on that just a little bit? I'm a little slow.
Well, it was finding the truth,
Mm-hmm.
meaning their truth.
Mm-hmm. Looking
Behind all the programs that are built in to separate us from ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And finding what is our truth, what is our essence, what is, who am I at the very core of my being? Why am I here? And how can I make my life as a whole a prayer? How do I live it as a prayer?
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So it's...
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's very self-discovery-esque, and I like it.
Yeah.
And
If you're always striving to be better than you were yesterday, then you're doing good. Keep going.
Well, one of my favorite sayings is the Japanese term kaizen, and it just means continuous improvement.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's super, I think, important for myself. Once I found that, it's kind of like I changed the way I think and act and move. So I accept your answer, Jamie. I accept it.
Thank you. So glad you accepted it.
That's so gracious of you, Claude.
Hey, I'm a gracious and modest person. What can I say?
Absolutely. So, wow. Jamie, if you were to, it's a new wrap-up question. If you were to have a billboard, where would you put it and what would it say on it?
I wouldn't have a billboard.
Wow. And she would put that in Times Square on a billboard saying, I wouldn't have a
No, I hate billboards.
I think everybody, I hate advertisements. Pop-ups are the worst.
But like, living in Hawaii for so long, we don't have billboards. And it's a beautiful thing. You don't understand how terrible billboards are until you've lived without them. Mm-hmm. So it's like, screw the billboard. Just look at a mountain.
The
ocean.
I love that answer. It reminds me of another answer another guest gave us, which is basically like, no, I don't want that, whether it's a billboard or whatever else. And so I love that thinking outside the box, if you will, type of answer.
Yeah. I can't tell anybody anything they don't already know. And if they're ready to hear it, they'll come to it on their own.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Very true. Can't push change on anyone who isn't ready there.
Right.
Yeah.
So, Jamie, wrapping up, where can people find you, more about you? Where can people buy your book? And are you on the social media or?
Yeah. So Instagram, I am Holistic Mojo. Facebook, Holistic Mojo. My website is holisticmojo.com.
I'm sensing
it's a lot of Holistic Mojo. My book, The Conscious Alcoholic, you can go to the website, which is theconsciousalcoholic.com, which is just going to send you to the Create Space website where you can purchase it. But it's also available on Amazon Kindle. It's on Amazon all over the world. So if you're outside of the States, I just had a friend in Belgium purchase the book, and she sent me an email and was like, they just charged, she purchased it through Create Space. They charged her like $20 in customs tax.
Whoa.
So go through your local Amazons. If you're outside of the States, definitely go through the local Amazons. But it's available in every country that has Amazon. Scandinavia has to go through the UK. But, yeah.
Okay.
That's where you can find me. All my info is on,
Holistic Mojo?
On holisticmojo.com.
All right, awesome. We'll be sure to put that in the show notes. Now,
it's been an absolute pleasure. We actually got to wrap up, but any parting thoughts or words for our gracious listeners?
Wake up. Start to look for all the wizard behind the curtain, because when there's something big going on out there in the world, and it's bringing everybody's attention, whether it's Zika, Ebola, the Taliban, Trump, look and see what else is going on, because that's just a ruse. That's just there to take your attention and your consciousness away from the real picture. So start to get curious and wake up.
I feel like we could have a whole second podcast with that topic.
Yeah, which we may have to do. But
I'm feeling like I'm leaning towards it. All right, Jamie. Well, it was awesome talking to you. We'll be sure to talk again very soon.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. It's been fun.
All right. Thanks, Jamie.
Thank you, everyone, for listening.
Thanks for listening to the Optimum Human podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please remember to head on over to iTunes and give a 5-star rating and review, which will help spread the word to more awesome listeners just like you. Head on over to theoptimumhuman.com and subscribe to the free newsletter and get the Optimum Human Blueprint to the Optimum Life downloaded instantly. Thanks for listening.